Well, Vodacom customers this afternoon telling News from Africa they welcome that agreement between the network operator and the South African Competition Commission. It will reduce prices of data just from the 1st of April.
I feel so much great. It's a very good thing that finally things are coming through together. Like this is the moment that everyone in the nation has been waiting for. So we are all happy on behalf of everyone, of course, yeah.
I honestly think that them trying to cut data, it's towards the good direction.
I feel relieved, like we can afford that on a daily basis, and like I'm a student, I can do like researches and everything, yeah.
Well, James Hodges, the Chief Economist at the Competition Commission, joins me now. James, good afternoon. Thanks for coming through. All right. How difficult were these negotiations? I mean, did the Competition Commission, did you get what you want, or could you have twisted their arms a little more?
I think in any negotiation, a good negotiation, both sides probably feel, slight disappointment. They couldn't get more, but that's the nature of negotiation. And I think the idea here is that we can move forward. Consumers can benefit from lower prices, the economy can benefit from lower prices, and we can start to address almost the structural imbalance in these pricing that we're really anti-poor.
Okay, I mean, you'd have to go back a long way to see such a big reduction in data or voice cost prices actually in the cell phone industry. Do you think it's going to make a big difference to consumers? Are people going to be able to access a lot more information for the same amount of money?
It should. So it is a package where we've traded off. So some data price cuts, and those are really your monthly bundles, and over 30%. And the phase, it will affect the smaller data bundles more, so those decreases will be greater. And the second round of cuts within a year. So that's one element. But there's also a massive component which is free data. So zero rating of a vast range of all your universities, TVET colleges, public schools, a host of essential government sites, as well as some messaging and search. So one needs to view it as a bit of a package, but I think it will cut down. But consumers also need to take advantage of it. And this is what we've learned in the data inquiry, is that things like transparency, which we're putting in place, help. Directing consumers to promotional offers, getting consumers informed as to what is free and zero rated so they can use it. So I think its benefits also depend on consumers.
I mean, one way to increase the sum of human happiness in South Africa would be able to make WhatsApp free because so many people use it. You can't quite go that far. When you talk about some messaging, I think you're talking about SMSs rather than something like WhatsApp?
Yeah, it's not WhatsApp. Often that is a commercial decision. So some of the networks already offer some of that for free or zero data. They'll offer, streaming of Netflix or the like as well. And that's a commercial decision they make. But there are messaging apps other than that. And of course, a free data element sort of enables you to save on one side and use it on another. So hopefully this provides substantial benefits.
There is, I think, some data, you'll know it much better than I do, that suggests there's a correlation between lower data prices and economic activity. In other words, the lower the data prices, the more economic activity there is, you grow the economy. Is that quite a strong correlation? Are you expecting to see more economic activity in South Africa to grow the economy as a result of your announcement today?
Yeah, so this package was in a sense about inclusion, bringing poorer consumers into the net, but that creates opportunities for business. So it's not just about small business or even larger business having cheaper data, which is an input, which may help them. It's also about creating opportunities for digital businesses. And the bigger the pool of customers that can access and use the data networks, the better for that. So hopefully this has a stimulus effect. Of course, these are troubled economic times globally even.
Okay, there's a huge issue with spectrum in South Africa. I mean, you'll be very aware of it. The cell phone companies say they don't have enough. It's incredibly complicated. It goes back to the arguments around digital terrestrial television. But basically, they want more spectrum so that they have more space to send the signals that your cell phones use to connect you to the internet. So did you take all of that into account? I mean, there are arguments, and I remember speaking to you last time when this was sort of getting going. Did you take that into account in all of this? That actually there is a sort of spectrum shortage, artificially so, in fact?
We did, and the final report identified that although there's a spectrum shortage that may raise costs in South Africa, that's not the only story. And so we found that profit levels are much higher than other countries in which these operators were present. So even though they had more spectrum there, clearly the cost increases here didn't mean that they were less profitable. So we took that into account. I mean, one thing is for certain, that lower prices stimulates demand. So releasing spectrum is more urgent now because it will be more capacity needed on these networks. So this is, I think, a part of the package, and we had even identified in the report sort of a short-term price effect, medium-term and long-term, fixing the regulatory environment, fixing the spectrum, and in the long run, actually free public Wi-Fi, getting fiber networks rolling out in low-income areas, developing 5G in those areas, all actually is what is required for a longer-term low data price future.
Cell phone networks have been making a profit. Again, you probably went into that in excruciating detail with some of your negotiations. Will they still be able to make a profit? And I say that because they do have to actually spend money on their networks, on the upkeep. I imagine, we're on stage 4 load shedding right now. They need to buy more generators. They also need to invest for the future for 5G, otherwise they'll fall behind, and so will South Africa. Will they still be able to make a profit?
Oh, absolutely. And I think one must remember that lower data prices also means more data usage. So there is a response from consumers that gives them a bit of a revenue kick as well. I mean, this is where we have to be responsible as well. We have to look at demands for low prices and the need for low prices, because there have been high levels of profits, but also the need for investment. And that's where one has to take a balanced view. We could, of course, want much, much lower prices. But if it puts their operators in a position where they can't make the investments, then in the long run, we're not better off. So that's why this is a balanced approach. And as I said, this is phase 1. It's not the end. Other things need to happen in order to keep driving down data prices.
Okay, all of this is the result. This agreement is because you made a finding that data prices must fall, to use the phrase, and then there was a negotiation. In fact, the implementation date was pushed back a little bit, and now we know with Vodacom it'll be in just 3 weeks' time. What have you done with MTN and Telkom? Have you got them in a locked room somewhere?
We're still in discussions, and I think, as the Commissioner said this morning, we are close. We had hoped to be over the line by now. We're in extra time already. But hopefully we can make those announcements within the next few weeks. But I think either way, one must remember that if your largest operator, Vodacom, brings down prices, others are going to have to respond. And part of what we wanted to put in place here was a sort of market catalyst effect. So we haven't tried to necessarily fetch exactly the same deal with everyone, in the recognition that also networks need to differentiate themselves. Someone may offer free on other sites as well, rather than these particular ones. But we're not here to regulate the industry and regulate the price. We're here to stimulate a competitive industry. And hopefully, much like when call termination rates came down on voice, this kicks in a response within industry that forces even Vodacom to respond once more. So this may not be the end, and this may not be where prices end up. They may end up lower still. So
I mean, we know for Vodacom where they'll be on the 1st of April. MTN will probably lose a large number of customers if it doesn't follow by the 2nd. In 2 years' time, then, prices will be lower still.
They must be. In telecommunications, there's only one trajectory, and there's lower prices. We do need spectrum, so that is important, and we've been consistent in calling for that. But we've also in the report called for, as I said, the fiber rollout and free public Wi-Fi, because that creates alternatives for consumers. And as soon as consumers have alternatives, they're able to say, I'm not willing to pay that anymore. I'm going with the alternative. So really that whole package is something we need to keep an eye on. And we certainly are not going to rest just because we have an agreement here with Vodacom. We're going to continue to push all the other parts of that agenda.
James Hodge, thanks very much indeed. Chief Economist at the Competition Commission, one of the people responsible for making data fall. Do we applaud? All right, thanks very much indeed for staying with us. Plenty more to come in the next little while. Why is it so important to keep it safe? You'll find out right here on Newsfeed in the next 45 minutes. Stay with us.